Let's take a look within the actual emails. A lot of times this is what many of the customers are actually focused on. Business needs are going to vary between different customers, but a lot of times this is what comes down to our email policies. The email content itself should be filtered based on criteria that's based on your business needs. So for example, if we want to look at outbound email, and we say if the body or attachment contains confidential, quarantine the message. That's easy enough, right? Everybody's seen PowerPoints, they've seen PDF documents, I'd imagine, with different types of security ratings embedded right there in the document. One of the purposes of this is A, inform the user that it's something that shouldn't be distributed. Anybody who looks at it sees a confidential watermark, it knows it needs to be handled differently. Now, beyond that, when that document is passed through an organization, if we've got the ability to read it, we can see that word confidential is built within, and we could actually grab it. Now, you could use anything for a dirty word, and you could be sneakier than confidential. You could just have, I'm trying to think of a goofy word, but I better not. You just make up a word that, purple platypus or something, right? And you put the word purple platypus somewhere embedded inside of the document. It can even be in places like metadata. Normal user doesn't see it. We're able to find that dirty word or that watermark that's been kind of embedded covertly. And the moment that we see that go by, we grab it. It's just a trick of finding a word that would be in your document and not other people's documents, and doing it in a really covert way. Sometimes even just doing something like misspelling intentionally of a business name or a process, embedding it in there. You can use that as, your trigger to basically bring up, to trigger this event. We're basically going to catch it. We can also create rules that say, okay, well, anything that's being sent to maybe incidents at yourdomain.com needs to be encrypted, or whistleblowers at yourdomain.com. So you know what? Everything that comes in must be encrypted. Again, when we take a look at these rules that we can create separate policies for each of our departments. And that makes sense because they're all going to have different needs. HR could be, handling social security numbers and things like this. So the content filters are going to allow inspection of the intricate details within the email message. And this is going to give us those detailed knobs to control what it is that we're talking about. We can create elaborate if conditions. This is really based on two components: our if, and then what is it that we want to do, the action. So content filters are going to be typically configured through the GUI. Realize that if necessary, you can jump into the CLI. This is always a nice backup plan, but it's typically not my first approach to doing policy administration. Two types of content filters. We've got incoming content filter for email that we receive, and then of course outgoing content filters for emails that we're passing to other parties. The content filters can be applied in either direction, and they're also reusable. So if you create something once and you name it, you can go ahead and apply that name in different directions. We can scan messages on a per user basis, and the order of conditions and actions are going to matter. Again, process from top to bottom. A condition is sometimes referred to as a trigger. I always think of this as kind of being like an incomplete sentence or an unfinished conversation with the security appliance. So I'm saying, hey, ESA. And he's like, yeah. I go, when you see messages that contain this word, if you contain a routing number, if you contain a social security number, if you contain, and you get the idea, we've got all these different if conditions that we can leverage as we go down. And you can actually tie together multiple conditions. So it has to be this and this, or this or that. Be very careful with the logical ors and logical ands. Sometimes it's possible to create a request or a trigger that would be on an impossible circumstance. You're saying, hey, hey firewall, show me packets that are TCP and UDP. And you're never going to find a packet that's both. You have to, I shouldn't say never. I suppose through lots of layers of encapsulation, that type of thing can occur. But under normal circumstances, it's not TCP and UDP. So just make sure you don't make anything where it would create an impossible or exclusive condition. Next, you've got your actions. You say, if you see things that look like that, what are we going to do to it? And I won't read these all to you, but you see here there's a laundry list of various actions that we can take on that traffic. So additionally, we can define what's called supporting features for content filters. It gives us the capability to dig in a bit deeper. Those supporting features include content filters, encryption profiles, disclaimer templates. We've all seen those. Notification templates. Sometimes it's things like notification, very similar to the disclaimer, where it's a zero expectation of privacy. All communications are monitored. Things like this, just to basically disclose to users, hey, we're going through everything that you're doing here. If we come back and fire you for really nasty behavior, and you go, oh my gosh, I'm going to get a lawyer, and you investigated, you breached my privacy, we can say no. We had very clear disclaimers in every single email that this is exactly what we were doing, eavesdropping on all of it. We can have policies for quarantine, and of course, create URL whitelists. The content dictionaries are basically just groups of words that we're going to leverage whenever we're scanning. There's third parties that publish these dictionaries for you, and some of them are really clever. They'll make dictionaries that are appropriate for a particular industry. So again, I think of this as what's called a dirty word list, but if we're trying to look for specific words or specific patterns going by, it's really slick that you don't just look at the message, you look at the PDF that was an attachment to the message, even when that PDF was zipped. Again, pretty powerful stuff. You also have the capability, for example, to do image analysis. So again, we're just glossing over this at a very, very high level, but notice under add condition, and we're looking at attachment file info, we can do things based on an image analysis verdict. So look at an image, determine, is this something that's inappropriate? Again, we're thinking in the context of work. What are we going to do based on that circumstance? So again, at a high level, just showing you that we can have different policies that are appropriate for IT, for sales, for HR. Notice that each of the groups has different content filters applied. So those content filters would be created, you give it a name, and then you come back and on the policy for that group of users, we just leverage that drop-down box and specify the content filter by name. Again, these policies are reusable, so if you've got one that works for multiple departments, you could name it based on what it's doing, and then assign that filter to different departments.